A number of years ago, while suffering from a mild case of scribe's fever, a form of neurasthenia common among the intelligentsia of that time, I had decided to spend the month of August in the spa town of Nebelspad, below the Alpine Sudetenwalds, and had taken up rooms in the Grand Budapest. A picturesque, elaborate, and once widely celebrated establishment. I expect some of you will know it. It was off-season, and by that time decidedly out of fashion, and it had already begun its descent into shabbiness and eventual demolition. What few guests we were had quickly come to recognize one another by sight as the only living souls residing in that vast establishment, although I do not believe any acquaintance among our number had proceeded beyond the polite nods we exchanged as we passed in the Palm Court and the Arabian Baths and on board the Colonnade funicular. We were a very reserved group, it seemed, and without exception, solitary. Perhaps as a result of this general silence, I had established a casual and bantering familiarity with the hotel's concierge, a West Continental known only as Monsieur Jean, who struck one as being at once both lazy and really quite accommodating. I expect he was not well paid. In any case, one evening, as I stood conferring elbow to elbow with Monsieur Jean, as had become my habit, I noticed a new presence in our company. A small, elderly man, smartly dressed, with an exceptionally lively, intelligent face, and an immediately perceptible air of sadness. He was, like the rest of us, alone, but also, I must say, he was the first that struck one as being deeply and truly lonely, a symptom of my own medical condition as well. "Who's this interesting old fellow?" I inquired of Monsieur Jean. To my surprise, he was distinctly taken aback. "Don't you know?" he asked. Don't you recognize him?" He did look familiar. "That's Mr. Mustafa himself. He arrived early this morning." This name will no doubt be familiar to the more seasoned persons among you. Mr. Zero Mustafa was at one time the richest man in Dubrovka, and was still indeed the owner of the Grand Budapest. He often comes and stays a week or more, 3 times a year at least, but never in the season. Monsieur Jean signaled to me, and I leaned closer. "I'll tell you a secret. He takes only a single-bed sleeping room without a bath in the rear corner of the top floor, and it's smaller than the service elevator." It was well known. Mustafa had purchased and famously inhabited some of the most lavish castles and palazzos on the continent. Yet here, in his own nearly empty hotel, he occupied a servant's quarters? At that moment the curtain rose on a parenthetical domestic drama which required the immediate and complete attention of Monsieur Jean. But frankly did not hold mine for long. However, this premature intermission in the story of the curious old man had left me, as the expression goes, gespannt wie ein Fitzbogen, that is, on the edge of my seat, where I remained throughout the next morning until, in what I have found to be its mysterious and utterly reliable fashion, fate once again intervened on my behalf. "I admire your work." I beg your pardon? "I said I know and admire your wonderful work." "Thank you most kindly, sir. Did Monsieur Jean have a word or two to share with you about the aged proprietor of this establishment?" "I must confess, sir, I did myself inquire about you." "Well, he's perfectly capable, of course, Monsieur Jean, but we can't claim he's a first or in earnest even second-rate concierge. But there it is. Times have changed. The thermal baths are very beautiful." "Yeah. They were in their first condition. Couldn't be maintained, of course. Too decadent for current tastes. But I love it all just the same, this enchanting old ruin." "How did you come to buy it, if I may ask, the Grand Budapest?" "I didn't." "If you're not merely being polite, and you must tell me if that's the case, but if it genuinely does interest you, may I invite you to dine with me tonight, and it will be my pleasure and indeed my privilege to tell you my story, such as it is." A dozen fiend eclair, actually make it 18, 4 langoustine, 2 ducks roasted with olives, a thick chunk of the young boar, blue with its marrow, turbot, puis Jouvet and Tavel, plus a split of the 98. Thank you. That should provide us ample time, if I commence promptly. By all means. Yes. It begins, as it must, with our mutual friend's predecessor, the beloved original concierge of the Grand Budapest. It begins, of course, with